Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is now given to the assigned civil party lawyer to continue putting questions to this witness. You may proceed. Civil party lawyer, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sopong, I'll continue my question now. Yesterday, you testified in relation to your uncertainty during your interview with the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges, and that those statements should not be used. My question is, you will not stand by the statement, that is the entire statements you made before the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges, or just portions of those statements? Response. I'd like to clarify this issue. The content of the interview with the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges, that is those words that I use, perhaps or maybe, for those portions with the maybe or perhaps shall be removed from the statements that I made. Counsel, are you implying that the whole statement, so the entire statement shall be removed, or just a portion? Mr. President, the response by the witness is already clear. You don't need to ask again. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll move on. I seek your permission, Mr. President, to use the document E3/64, EN in Khmer is 0032 8040, and English 00334057, and in French 0041 1707. The prosecution asked you the question that before I put the question, I'd like to seek permission first from the bench. President, yes, you may proceed. The co-investigating judges asked you a question that in that telegram there is a request for opinion, and you replied that for certain matters, if Pol Pot could decide, then Pol Pot would respond immediately. However, on certain matters, and when it was related to the entire committee, then Pol Pot would convene a meeting within the committee for a decision. Can you clarify on those certain issues that Pol Pot could not decide on his own? Response. Regarding that telegram, I clearly stated that I was not sure, and the word perhaps that I used, it means I was not certain. So I'd like the court not to rely on that portion of my statement. Thank you. question. Through your experience in decoding telegrams, and as you saw the communication between the base and 870 committee, did any meeting by the standing committee take place in response to the incoming telegrams? Response: I did not know, as I was not a member of the standing committee. Thank you. Now I move to my next question. It is related to document E3/67, that is your second interview with the OCIJ. The ERN in Khmer is 00294545, in English 0048 39 73, and in French 00374940. In your response, you state, as for letters from Nuon Chea, I used to decode them as well, but it was not frequent. The question is the following. What were the content of the messages that Nuon Chea asked you to decode? Response: Nuon Chea dealt with the meetings of the People Representatives Assembly. So before the meeting, he would invite members of the assembly from the bases. So it only occurred once every year. It did not take place on a daily or weekly basis. You said it was held once every year. So how many times were the assembly convened during the entire period of the regime? Response: I only received one message, and it was in 1977. And after that, due to the situation in the country, the assembly did not convene. And as I remember, that was the only one time that the Nuon Chea sent a message for members to convene the assembly. Thank you. With the court permission, I'd like to use the document the 200/9.12. ERN in Khmer is 00294581, in English 00434365, and in French 00767253. I believe the witness already has the document as it was delivered from the prosecution to him. I have supplementary questions regarding that document, in addition to the questions asked by the prosecution. President: yes, you may proceed. Counsel: thank you, Mr. President. In relation to your chart, in relation to the boxes, that is 870 committee, the state president, and another box, that is the People Representative Assembly. The question is, how did these three bodies communicate among themselves through telegrams? Response. In relation to the communication between the 870 committee, the state presidium, or the assembly, I never saw any telegram calling for a meeting among themselves because they were all based in Phnom Penh. And if they wanted to communicate amongst themselves, that was not difficult. There was no need to use the confidential message by my team. Counsel, my next question is related to your testimony that from your testimony from the 29th August up to this morning, your response mainly dealt with the communication via telegram domestically. What about the telegram correspondence between Cambodia and other countries? How was it done? Did any of the telegrams from overseas sent to 870 committee? Response. In relation to overseas telegram, I could not grasp them fully, so I am in no position to enlighten you. Counsel, thank you. What about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Did it ever send any telegram through 870 committee through your unit, or did they send it directly to 870 committee? Response. Ministry of Foreign Affairs was located in Phnom Penh. There was no telegram communication with my team. Counsel, if not, how did they communicate? That is, the communication between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and 870 committee? Response. I did not know. Counsel. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, did they have their own decoding team? President, witness, please hold. Counsel Michael Canavas, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. This question was asked yesterday. I don't know whether the lawyer was present yesterday when the gentleman did answer that question. It answered it in response to a question posed by the prosecution. Therefore, there's no need to ask the question again unless simply to see whether the gentleman recalls something differently today than what he stated yesterday under oath. Thank you.
Counsel, I asked this question is just to get his further confirmation. whether in each ministry it had its own decoding team. In the cases that the transmission of overseas telegram did not go through his unit and could go straight to Office 870 Committee, and I'd like Mr. President to instruct the witness to respond.
With all due respect, Mr. President, and I'm not trying to debate the point, but now there's a fact which is not at evidence. Counsel is testifying and is making assumptions. And therefore, I would object to that commentary. She's trying to testify as to what may or may not have been happening as to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She can ask the question whether the gentleman had any experience with the Foreign Affairs. If the answer is no, then we move on, as opposed to speculating as to what may or may not be happening at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There may be other witnesses that could enlighten the parties and the chamber. Thank you.
President, thank you, Counsel. The chamber already reminded the witness of his obligation, and we have seen then that the witness tries to his best to listen to the questions and respond appropriately, and he even requested to change his previous statements where he was not sure. That is, during his interview with the investigators of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges. He is trying to provide an appropriate testimony without providing any assumption. As we observed yesterday before the lunch break, that some of his responses were presumptuous, and the chamber took note of that, and after we returned, the chamber instructed the witness of his obligation and that he should only respond to the questions based on his personal knowledge, experience, or observation. In relation to the events related to the questions posed to him, and that is clear to everyone. The objection raised by the counsel is ungrounded, and the witness can respond to that question. That question is different from the question put to him yesterday. Witness. Regarding the communication from overseas, at that time I knew the communication existed, including the diplomatic relationship. However, when it comes to telegram communication, and as I did not have any instruction or directions to deal with any matters concerning the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for that reason I declined to comment on this question. Counsel, thank you for your response. Now I move on to my next question. Yesterday, you raised the issues of the 870 Committee and the Center. The question is, how many members within 870 Committee, to your knowledge? Response. I did not know how many members were within 870 Committee, nor I knew who were the members. Council, I'd like to go back a little bit. On 29 August 2012, you testified in your response to the prosecution that it is related to the front battlefield and the rear battlefield. My question is, in order to resolve the matters at the front battlefield, without having to go through or seeking opinion from the rear battlefield, or was it need to be done by seeking the opinion first from the rear battlefield? Response. In relation to the work that I did at the rear battlefield, there were only telegrams concerning the victory achieved at the front battlefield, at the various front battlefields, and that messages would be broadcast on the radio. However, when it comes to other domestic matters at the rear battlefield, there was no instruction or direction throughout the period that I stayed at the banana field for about half a year. There was no telegram communication between the front and the rear battlefields. Mainly, there were messages to be broadcast. Council. Based on your experience in the decoding team, was there any sector or zone that failed to report to 870 committee? And if there were no reports, did or was the 870 committee aware of it? And if so, what were the measures or the reaction by the 870 committee? Response. Regarding the reports from the lower to the upper level or from the upper level to the lower level, there was no reaction from 870 committee regarding any reports. I did not see such an incident. I never see any reprimand or scolding from the upper echelon regarding any report. Council, thank you. In your testimony yesterday, you stated that in general, incoming messages would be addressed to respected brothers, and other kinds of messages would address to 870 committee. My question is, in the case that Pol Pot was absent, who would receive the telegrams on his behalf? And who had the authority to reply to those telegrams? Response. During the regime, I was within my decoding team, and as I stated, there were various teams, and my role was not inside, but it was outside. So whenever I decoded the message would send to the inside part, and they would manage those messages. I did not know anyone who would replace Pol Pot during his absence. I did not know who had the authority to respond. Counsel, my next question is related to the situation in Phnom Penh. Since you came, worked, and stayed in Phnom Penh, did you ever observe any event or incident that you would like to report to the chamber or to tell the chamber? Response. Events that I encountered during the period that I stayed in from Phnom Penh, that is from 75 to late 76, everything was kind of regular, but in late 77 up to early 79, it seems that everyone was insecure. I also saw reports from the base regarding the incursion or the conflict from the eastern border front. I also saw wounded combatants, and the hospitals were full of those wounded combatants. I also saw people who were war displaced from the east, and they resided along the river side, and some even went further than Phnom Penh. I also heard and saw, that is in Phnom Penh during 1978, there were sabotage, there were hand grenade throwing, killing foreign diplomat, and there were assassination of cadres that occurred in 1978. For all those reasons, I did not live happily. I was always concerned, and that was my impression during that period. Counsel, you said that there was a grenade attack. Who actually did that act? And in what period? Can you specify the period? Response. I did not know who actually conducted that sabotage. I recall that it happened in 1978. It was prior to the liberation on 7 January 79. Counsel, My next question is related to the smash of the internal enemy within the party. Was there any telegram talking about the purge of the enemy addressed to 870? Response. Regarding the purge, the smashing, I believe you already have the telegrams talking about all those things presented by the prosecution. There are a lot of telegrams talking about that, so there is no need for me to say anything. However, the true meaning of the purge or the screening or the smashing, I myself never witnessed it. President, Counsel, you are reminded that your questions shall be directed to the knowledge of the witness, not to put questions just for the sake of it outside the knowledge of the witness. Otherwise, you would waste your time. And you only have about 37 minutes to put a question to this witness. Thank you, Mr. President, says the Counsel. I have my last question related to the communication between Nuon Chea, Pol Pot, or Kit Sampon, and Pol Pot, or Ieng Sary and Pol Pot. Did you ever know about that communication or the relationship between these individuals? Or did you ever hear about the relationship between these two people? And through your experience working for Office 870, can you enlighten us on this point? Response. Regarding the relationship amongst those leaders, it's beyond my knowledge. During that time, I had a very minor role, so I could not know about the affairs of those senior leaders. Counsel, thank you for your response. Next, I would like to give the floor to my international counsel to put a question to you. Thank you for your effort. Thank you, Mr. President.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors, and everyone. Good morning, Mr. Nong Sopang. I am a civil party co-lawyer, and I would like to put a few questions to you. First of all, I would like to briefly revisit the period 1975 and to talk about a statement you made to the co-prosecutors on the 28th of August. You said regarding the plans to liberate Phnom Penh and the fight against Lon Nol soldiers, I received instructions regarding attacks. In fact, there was an existing plan. Ammunition was also ready. Could you please give us more details on that statement and tell us what instructions you are talking about and to who precisely you gave such instructions?
Response. The plan to attack Phnom Penh was already stated before the chamber, and I made it clear that I have no knowledge of this, and I never saw any telegrams concerning the order from Angkar to the military to attack any direction. I worked at the rear, and when it comes to the plans to attack Phnom Penh by any sections, was precisely clearly indicated to the chamber that it was Pol Pot who went to the battlefront to the west of Phnom Penh, and that he did not need to send any telegrams concerning the attack of Phnom Penh because all divisions were located surrounding Phnom Penh already, and I was attacked to the rear, and I could not know anything about this. And such messages would never reach my office at the banana plantation.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. My question was not on telegrams, but on a statement you gave during the hearings. But since we are running out of time, I will move to my next question. I would like to ask some questions regarding your family, Mr. Sopang. During the 29 August hearing, you briefly referred to your parents. In answer to a question asked by the President, could you please give us more details on your family? Did you have, in particular, brothers and aunts and uncles?
The President: Witness, you are instructed not to respond to the question as it was not falling within the fact at issue. The President of the Chamber already put a few questions concerning the identification of the witness, concerning some questions concerning these family background of the witness, and it is already done.
With all due respect, Mr. President, I am trying to receive some information with respect to the witness's family, if he was in contact with his family, particularly during the Khmer Rouge regime from 1975 to 1979, as such information was not provided during the earlier hearing.
The President: Witness, you do not need to respond to this question as it does not contribute to any ascertaining of the truth.
Monsieur Nansopang, Mr. Phnom Penh, I wish to put a few questions to you with respect to the situation in Phnom Penh between 1975 and 1979. You stated that you arrived in Phnom Penh at the end of 1975. Can you please describe to us the situation that was reigning in the city from the end of 1975 to the start of 1979?
Response: I already stated about this to the chamber. I talked about how I felt when I came to Phnom Penh, and I stated that Phnom Penh was very quiet. It was not as populated as Phnom Penh today is. And what was strange to my feeling at that time was not observed, so there was none strange atmosphere. It was strange Only by late 1977 and early 1978 that I felt there were some things that were out of the ordinary, and I already talked about this to the chamber.
Can you please provide us a few more details and tell us who was present in Phnom Penh at the time? Who were they?
Response: I saw factory workers, soldiers, and mainly there were factory workers in the city, those who worked very hard to produce some goods to be distributed to the cooperatives at the bases. So these were the activities of the people I saw in the city, and the majority of whom were workers.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Did you have the opportunity to travel about the city at various occasions from various destinations to the next?
Response: I could not travel frequently because it was part of the discipline that everyone had to perform our tasks very well, and for that I could not leave my place for other locations. On some occasions, when I was assigned to give some instructions on technical aspects to others, I already indicated about my services. For example, when I was needed to provide some trainings to people at the location where such techniques were needed, I would then go. At that time, even when my brother was sick, I was not able to see him because I could not make such a decision of my own accord. I did not there ask permission to leave work to visit my sick brother, because I did not want to miss the assignment, the task as handed down to me by Angkar.
Thank you. Am I therefore to gather that you did not have the right to move about freely, either in the city or in the provinces?
Response: yes, it is correct. People could not move about freely.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Mr. Witness, you stated that you were only able to telephone 3 places: Mr. Kyo Sompon's office, Lankan, and Los. Do you know why you were only able to be in communication with those 3 locations?
Response: it was because the telephone line that linked to my location, it was the landline telephone. It was not the wireless telephone connection as we could do these days. The line was well connected directly to my place, my office, and the purpose of this was to facilitate the communication, the correspondences, and the orders or instructions that had to be rendered or communicated. And if I had to submit or transmit the urgent message to K18, and the message was very urgent, but it was not yet decoded, and it was time when it had to be communicated, I would then ask people to wait or to hold on for about like 5 to 10 minutes before the communication could be disconnected, waiting for me to make sure that the message could be decoded and communicated online.
Je vous remercie.
I wish to return very briefly on the topic of the children that you were in charge of training and who were also responsible for decoding messages and telegrams. Can you please tell me, sir, how those children were chosen to come to Phnom Penh and by whom?
Response. Those children were recruited by the local organization or Angkar. First, they were not sent directly to my office. I knew this because I asked these young people who told me that first they were made to stay at a location along the river bank. I didn't ask more information concerning their whereabouts before they came to my office. Then after they gathered all together, they would then be sent to me. Some of them were not literate. They could not read or write, and I had to also teach them to read and write.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you for that response. Do you know if they were chosen based on any specific criteria?
Response. The basic criteria at that time was more on the good, clean class. Those who were the children of the base people. This was part of the principle for recruiting others to work. They would like people who were honest. Honesty was really important at that time.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. You told this court that the children were aged between 10 to 12 years of age, and who was responsible for providing care or supervision to these children, or were they left to tend for themselves?
Response. I do not know whether I did mention that the children were 10 years old. I think that there could have been a typo error. I have said that the children were as young as 12 years old. And when they were already at this age, they could be on their own. For example, they could dress by themselves, they could take care of themselves. And at the same time, I also treated them as my younger siblings or brothers and sisters. When at night they forgot to cast the mosquito net, I would then help prepare the bed for them, because I was at that time as their second parent already.
Thank you. I'll therefore confirm that during your first interview before the co-investigating judges, you did state that those children were aged between 10 and 12 years of age. This is in document E3/67 on the French ERN page 0041. 696 on the ERN page in English 004340. 46. Unfortunately, I do not have the Khmer ERN pages at my disposal. Let's return to the issue of children again. Now, were they also subjected to very strict discipline, as was the case for other individuals?
Response. At my place, there was no strict discipline. These children were regarded as the most sincere people already. And they also enjoyed some freedom in eating and living. At the school, they could really make use or eat the coconut and fruit that could be picked from the fruit trees in the premises, and they were allowed to do that, and I never stopped them from doing so. So their living condition was decent, and there was no pressure being imposed on them.
Je vous remercie. Était-il jamais soumis à des...
Thank you. And were they ever punished?
Response. I personally never imposed any torture on any of them. If they fail to perform their tasks properly to the best capacity, I would then be the one who advised them to improve, to correct the shortcoming, and would ask them to become good citizens for the party and for the country. I never resorted to using tortures as part of the approach to educate young people.
Thank you for that answer. Let us return to a statement that you made before the co-investigating judges. During your second interview, I'm referring to document E3/67, ERN French pages 00374933, English ERN pages 00483966, and Khmer ERN pages 00294537. In that statement, you declared, and I quote, to remove, the term to remove meant to remove from one place or transfer from one tempering place to another, but I did not know the exact location where one was removed and taken. When one was removed, it meant that one had committed a mistake or offense. To my knowledge, Yu was already removed, and Pok had been assigned as his replacement. As for Pong and Tay at K1, I do not know, but they may have been removed as well. As for Pon, I do not know. Tay and Pong, I do not know which one disappeared first. Mr. Witness, I have a few clarification questions to put to you, as some of these statements are somewhat contradictory, and therefore I seek to understand. Now, do you know if Pong and Tet were removed, or do you know if they disappeared?
Response. At that time, I did not know when these people disappeared or removed or were removed. The investigators tried to ask me this question time and again. I already stated very early that I did not know from the beginning. First, he asked me to explain about the removal of people, and I started to explain on this. But then more and more questions were bombarded on me on Pong and Te, and I had nothing but to say I didn't know. And you could also see my statement, and indeed the statement could not be used as the evidence because I said I didn't know. And I do not know what happened to the removal of people at the base. I do not know how this worked. And I was concerned. I was very worried that if I myself did not perform my task very well, I would also end up being removed. So I tried my best to refashion myself to ensure that I follow the good moral or ethical code of conduct. And by doing so, I was sure that if I committed no wrongdoing or mistake, I would not be the one who would be removed. So at that time, I personally did my best to correct myself, to build myself to the full capacity so that I could be free from being removed.
Je vous remercie pour ces précisions.
Thank you for those details, Mr. Nong Sopong. Now, aside from Te and Pong, you yourself talked about the fear of being removed for not carrying out your work properly. Now, did you observe other disappearances? Without identifying anyone in particular or disclosing any names, did you notice people vanishing or disappearing while you were there?
Response. I learned that when Yus disappeared, Polk was called to become the chair of K18. That really made me feel that it was not normal, because I used to receive instruction from Yu, but by 1978 it was Polk who was the person I needed to talk to other than Yu. The missing or disappearance of Yu made me worry, because I felt that he did not disappear for no reason. Because if Yu did not commit any wrongdoing, then Polk would not be the one who was assigned to replace him.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Let us move back to the topic of Office 870 and the role played by that office. During your 2 interviews before the co-investigating judges and during these hearings, Mr. Witness, you talked about Office 870 quite extensively, but it seems to me that there is some vagueness, because you sometimes refer to it as the Standing Committee or the Central Committee. Therefore, can you please tell me, sir, what for you is the difference between those two committees, if indeed there is one?
Response. I think you are employed at even the United Nations body, and I think at the United Nations there would be a kind of standing committee body, and I should not wish to elaborate further on this as it is commonly known.
Je ne sais pas s'il y a un problème de...
I'm not sure if there's a problem of interpretation. I'm just seeking some clarification, some precision from you, sir. Now, during previous interviews, and I'll quote those PVs, you sometimes talk about the Central Committee, and sometimes you talk about the Standing Committee. There's a distinction between the two. And earlier, you had even defined Office 870 as the Standing Committee, but you also refer to it as the Central Committee, and I just want to make sure that it is one and the same.
Response. I am not really sure concerning the term committee. That's why I stated as what I'm not sure. Sometime I read Committee 870 or sometime Office 870. Sometimes they only noted 870 alone without committee or office, and this makes it difficult for me to be more precise because the terms are interchangeably used and it's difficult to recognize it as which is which.
Very well. Thank you, sir. Now, just to be absolutely certain, for you, Office 870, Standing Committee and Central Committee all refer to one same and single entity. Is that correct?
Mr. President, if I may. It mischaracterized the gentleman's testimony. It is what it is. We have his various answers on that. Now they're trying to summarize it into what would appear to be inaccurate based on his previous answers. So I think it's been asked and answered. They got the answer. Time to move on.
The President witness is now instructed not to respond to the question.
Monsieur Nong Sopong, j'aurais...
Mr. Nong Sopang, I would like to ask some questions regarding Nuon Chea, and I would like to refer to your interview, your first interview to the Office of Co-Investigating Judges. During that interview, a number of telegrams were shown to you, and the co-prosecutor referred to those telegrams yesterday. Telegram 15, document E3/16/16/9, E3/69. When you were questioned on those documents by the co-investigating judges and you were asked why Nuon Chea was copied, and you said that Nuon Chea was in charge of the service relating to people, could you please explained to the chamber exactly what you meant when you said he was in charge of the sector relating to people. What were precisely his responsibilities?
Response. It was a public announcement that Mr. Nguyen Chia was attached to the People's Representative Assembly, and he was also the chairperson of that institution. So as the people's representative, he shall know whatever matters that relevant to the people, and he was at the supreme body to be in charge of all matters relevant to the people as he was representing them.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I would like to refer you to another statement you gave, and it is document E3/64, and the French ERN is 0041178. ERN in English is 00334058, and Khmer ERN is 0032804. You also stated as follows: internal problems of misconduct were under the jurisdiction of Nguyen Chia, and you subsequently state regarding moral offenses, they were pertaining to rape. Can you tell us whether you had to deal with many telegrams dealing with the moral misconduct, specifically rape?
Response. The telegram on the moral offense, I think what you saw is what I saw. It was sent from Mundolkiri. I only saw one a telegram on this. And at that time, when someone was reported as having committed moral offense, it means that person could have been committing the sexual offense or misconduct. I do not recall having seen any other telegrams from any other sectors other than the one you indicated on this matter.
Je vous remercie pour ces précisions.
Thank you for these clarifications, witness. I am almost done with my examination. I would like to refer you to a last statement you gave, and that was your second interview given to the co-investigating judges, document E3/67, and this time the ERN in French is as follows: 00374935. ERN in English 00483968, and the ERN in Khmer is 00294539. And in that statement, Mr. Nong Sopang, you referred to a person called Kami, and you state as follows. On the Committee 870, there was also a military unit headed by Kami who had sacrificed his life on the battlefield in 1978-79, because K1 was Pol Pot's station and K3 that of Kyosampan. On the 870, I knew that there was A71 and the military unit headed by Kami. Could you please provide further clarifications as to who Mr. Kami was and what his role was at the time?
Response. Mr. Kami was of an ethnic minority group from the northwest, rather northeast. I did not know his full name. He was known as Kami, and he led a unit of soldiers, the office or the headquarters that was adjacent to the school I taught. Mr. Kami led the unit that was under the direct supervision of S71 and the direct supervision of 870. When there were visiting guests, then Kami would be the one who managed security matters for the visiting persons.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Do you know how that military unit was called? Was it referred to by a particular figure?
Response. No, I don't know.
Avez-vous déjà entendu
Have you ever heard the code name Y10?
Response. Yes, I have heard of it, but I'm not quite sure whether I knew this. That's why I didn't say I knew it.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Do you mean, therefore, that you are not in a position to assert that Y10 was the code name of that military unit headed by Mr. Kami?
Response. It is true to say that I don't know that, and I do not even know the other K officers surrounding this institution, let alone the military units. I could not really recall all these K officers and not the military units. The President, Council, could you advise the Chamber how much more time did you prefer, because it's really 12:08.
I am done with my questions, Mr. President. I thank you.
The President. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Witness. The hearing session now for this morning comes to a conclusion. The Chamber will adjourn, and the next session will be resumed by tomorrow at 9 a.m. The Chamber wishes to remind parties to the proceedings and the public that there is not going to be a trial hearing because the Chamber has other issues to attend to. For tomorrow's session, the Chamber continues hearing the testimony of Mr. Nong Sopong and the questions to be first put by counsel for Kiew Sompon before the other two defense teams. Mr. Nong Sopong, your testimony has not yet been concluded, so you are now invited to come to the courtroom again tomorrow. Court officer is now instructed to assist Mr. Nong Sopong during the adjournment and have him return to the courtroom by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Security personnel are now instructed to bring all the accused persons to the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom before 9 a.m. The court is adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រងឈរ